Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Income Gaming, Cheltenham's premier friendly local game store. Check the link in the description. So we know the Orc Goblin Tribes is on the way with a new battalion and a lovely arcane journal, but we just don't know when. I think it was way back in May 2023 that I did a tutorial for a Night Goblin, and since then I've had many requests to do orcs and other goblins and other greenskins. So now it's time. Welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart, and in this video I will take you through how I paint an Orc Boy. Today's video is sponsored by Baron of Dice, who are also a fantastic channel sponsor. Thank you for all their support. They have a fantastic range of dice for all games, including custom dice. And if you click the link in the video description, it will take you right there. And using the code Miniature Realms, you get a 5% discount as well. Maybe you're returning to square-based gaming with the old world and you can't get the dice you'd want. Maybe they've sold out at Games Workshop. Maybe you haven't got a full set of scatter and artillery dice because they don't come in the starter set. Well, don't worry, Baron of Dice have got you covered. They sell individual scatter and artillery dice, and if you want to group together with friends, they come cheaper in packs. They also have a fantastic range of fantasy-themed dice as well. Ones that are perfect for your Bretonians or for your Empire or for your Dwarves or for your Tomb Kings. And if you head over to their fantasy range, they also cover factions that you might find in Age of Sigmar, which funnily enough do very well for Warhammer Fantasy or Old World at the same time. So there's some Skaven style dice, maybe there's some chaotic style dice, lots of things that will suit your needs in plenty of different styles and colours. They come in rounded edges and square edges, and they have a wide range of dice that will cover other games you may play as well. So if you haven't already, click the link in the video description, go and check them out. You never know, there might be the perfect dice you need for your new army. Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Baron of Dice, premium wargaming dice. Over 500 styles, over 4,000 customer reviews. Welcome to the best dice on the planet. I have to thank Sean Farrell, a very kind channel viewer, for this cheeky chappy. He sent me over 2 completely unbuilt plastic orcs, one for me, one for my son for his growing Orc and Goblin army. And you can see here I have primed him black, and I've done a bit of underpainting already. So there's a white, almost zenithal with the airbrush, mostly top down, but I've gone in around the sides a bit as well, leaving lots of shadow in there for that grayscale style effect. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just dry brushing on top as well to really pick out some of those edge details. And when I do the base layers using contrast style paints, it will really help that detail come through. So it's a mix of zenithal and slap chop going on here. There were so many options I could have gone with for green, and I've decided to go with Ghillie Dhu from Army Painter Speed Paint. This is at a 2.0 range. Now this is quite a bright and vibrant green. It's described as a yellowish green or a greenish yellow colour, and you can see that coming through in the raised areas there. I really wanted something vibrant because I wanted it to be able to handle some extra layers of glazing with other colours, which we'll come on to shortly. I wanted it to give a really good base to work from as well as a bit of a guide, but also this miniature is going to have a jump off point like many of my tutorials do, where you can leave it at the very basic tabletop style, or you can choose to further highlight afterwards. So I'm just working my way around all of the green skin areas, and you can see that this paint is fantastic. It covers very well, it doesn't pull on the flat surfaces, and runs into all those recesses exactly the way you want it to, and I'm pretty impressed with it. Now this is Murder Scene from Army Painter Speed Paint 2.0 range, and I'm using this very much like I use Deep Purple from the Vallejo Express Colour range on my Caucasian skin recipes that you'll no doubt have seen in many painting tutorials if you've watched some before. Now I've thinned this 50-50 with water. I'm just applying it into the recesses, not in every recess of the skin, but just in certain areas, and it really gives a different kind of vibrance to the skin, gives it some variation and gives it a little bit of warmth. It's a perfect colour just to use for the inside of the mouth here as well, so just placing it on the tongue. I can follow the method round to the other parts of the body as well, so in the recesses and the fingers, over the knuckles a little bit, around where the shadowy would be and the cuffs and things, and just apply it bit by bit. If you go on too heavy, you just clean your brush and just wash it away and blend it out. Works really nicely as well in all of the creases on the muscles. Again, doesn't matter if it overspills a little bit, I'm just adding a little bit of water to my brush and just feathering it out and cleaning it up, and it just really adds a multi sort of layer and multi-tone to the skin. The best part about it is just super easy and really, really simple to do, and the skin alone, just like that, without any highlighting, without any complicated painting methods here, just looks fantastic. And we're literally talking about 2 speed paints over a Zenithal stroke Slapshot underpainted prime. Now we've got to start with a ton of browns, and this is contrast wildwood, and I'm going to be using it for the handle on this big chopper here, and then the tiny bit of wood that's showing on the backside of the shield. The next brown is contrast Garagak sewer, and I'll be using this a little bit more. It forms the basis of a lot of my leather recipes, so we're going to use it from the whole leather jerkin or the top that he's wearing here. And then any other little leather belts and straps and things. So he's got this little arm tie at the top. He's got a belt with a couple of things hanging down. And then we're on to brown number 3 with Cygor Brown. Now this has got a redder tone to it, or a redder undertone, and it's perfect for using on things like boots. It's slightly darker. You could use this for leather as well, but when you're using so many browns on a miniature, I like to use a few different types just to make them stand out. Now these boots have a little wrap in the middle, so I'm doing my best to keep the paint away from that, I can get better results for the next contrast style paints I put on if I keep within the lines, so to speak. So it's worth taking your time to do that, because it saves a little bit of time later on. Yes, guess what? It's another brown, this time hardened leather from Army Painter's Speed Paint. I'm using this on this leather kilt or skirt or whatever you want to call it here, and it just again gives you a slight difference in tone for all the other browns are on there, so that each part of the miniature will stand out and not look too samey and boring. He's also got little leather ear flaps that hang down from his helmet, and I'm using the same colour here. There's a leather tie holding the chopper onto the wooden handle. I've decided to use the same paint here as well. Now sort of away from the browns, but very brownish, we're on to Skeleton Horde. This is also from Citadel, and I'm using this for the leather wrapping or covering that's on the shield here. This is quite a thin paint, but I'm really just slightly tinting the white that's already here. I've put quite a lot of paint on there, but I will remove most of that that's pooling and flatten it all out. The idea is it looks like some tan skin or some parchment or something or other over the top. I'm not too worried what it is, but what it does really well is it shows through that underpainting. Now I'm using the same colour on the wraps on the wrists, and there's a few other little bits around the miniature as well. There's another little wrap on the top of the chopper handle tying onto the wood, and of course those aforementioned bits around the centre of the boots. Now this is Contrast Agaras Dunes. It's similar to Skeleton Horde in many ways, but slightly richer, higher pigmented paint. It's got a bit more of a yellow tone to it, so it's perfect for the nails and teeth on this orc. And moving on swiftly here, we're now on to the metals, and this is Decayed Metal from Scale Colour, from Scale 75. It's their metallics range, and I'm going to use this on all of the metal areas on the miniature to provide a nice deep brownish tone to them, and it'll help them look old and battered and weathered. So you've got the metal on the front of the armour, you have his chopper, you have his helmet, and then you've got quite a few studs and bolts and things around the place as well. Now the next metallic paint is from the same Scale Colour range, and this is Black Metal, and we're pretty much going to go over all of the areas we've already painted in Decayed Metal. Again, if you've watched a lot of my videos before, this will be incredibly familiar to you because it's very much a go-to metallic recipe that I have. Now I'm leaving a little bit of the brown showing through, and that's deliberate. It really helps make it look more realistic, make it look more aged and worn, and that's something we want here. I don't want to look too shiny on the orc, and while there will be some high shine later on when we do the final highlight, by adding the brown underlayers to it, it just seems to keep a little bit of that kind of old decayed look to it, which is what we're really after. So again, methodically working my way around the whole miniature, going over all of the metallic areas that we've already touched with that first layer. And now we reach our jump off point. So if you left the miniature as it is now, as a big unit, would look absolutely fantastic on the table. We've not done any highlighting here and only one double layer on the metals, but it looks great. But we're going to carry on do quite a bit of highlighting. And this is Flat Earth and Tan Earth from Vallejo model colour, and these are my go-to colours for highlighting my leather when I've used Garagax Sewer as a base. I have both paints on the palette at the same time, and I've thinned them quite a lot, almost 2 parts paint, 1 part water, and I'm just building these layers up rather slowly at the moment. They look a little bit darker when they first go on, but as they dry a little bit more translucent. And I'm focusing to start with on the raised areas, so on the creases where you've got the raised area at the top, or where the light would hit over the shoulders, and then I just slowly add in some of the Tan Earth to the mix with the Flat Earth and build up layer by layer. By the time we get to the very top highlights, we've just got pure Tan Earth here, and we're just adding those as little marks around the edges, little thin lines here and there, and the layers that have slowly built up just really look great on a miniature. Obviously, don't forget to highlight the other little parts of leathers without the belts, the little straps holding on the chopper. You've got the flappy straps down the sides of the helmet and things like that. Sticking with model colour, we have orange brown and light brown. Again, if you've watched my tutorials before, you'll have seen this recipe. This is perfect for highlighting the Army Painter hardened leather. Very much the same thing here, having the paints very thin on the wet palette. I'm just slowly building up in the higher areas, focusing on where the miniature has details and raised areas on the edges, that kind of thing, and just lightening that up, keeping some of the dark areas in the shadows, and just watching the colours slowly build as you go. By taking your time and keeping the paint thin, you're not going to obliterate the base colour that you've put down, so you're not losing any of that shadow. And as you can see here, there's really simple effects like focusing around the edge at the bottom of this skirt here with a slightly lighter colour. Just really adds to the definition and helps it stand out. By the time we get onto those lighter colours on the top highlights, all you really need is very thin lines here and there just to accentuate it and make it stand out. Now we have model colour Hull Red and German Camo Pale Brown. Now these are perfect for highlighting the boots colour, which is the Cygor Brown base. There are a couple of different ways to do it. Model colour have a fantastic range of real earthy browns. I really love the paints for that. This has got quite a reddish tone to it, but I think that helps the definition between the different browns on the miniature, and that's something I wanted to do. There's a whole lot of brown in this miniature. There needs to be. I don't want there to be lots of bright colours on this one, but by mixing up the different tones of browns that we're using, the different recipes, they can stand out from one another. This looks quite bright when it first goes on, but once it dries, it definitely settles down and tones down a bit more. So I had the two colours on my palette, and I mixed them 50-50 together for a middle tone there, which I'll just slowly build up with the layers. And I do that a lot when I have two colours on them highlighting. If I have three, I maybe mix the stages between them, and that's really easy to do on a wet palette. The time we start getting towards that top highlight, again, we're just using very thin lines here. We're not completely covering what we did before, so you can see all the layers there, and they just blend in nicely, and you end up with this really pleasing effect. To highlight the skeleton horde areas, I'm using model colour yet again, and it's Iraqi sand and off-white this time. I'm going much lighter here than I did with some of the other layers. I'm trying not to focus heavily in the centre of this. I don't want to build up the whole centre with a large amount of paint, so I'm focusing very much on the edges, using the edge of my brush here to go around the straight edge of the shield, just highlighting the very tops of these scratches here rather than sort of focusing on big flat areas of paint, and you get a really simple but pleasing effect. Of course, there are lots of other areas using this colour on the miniatures, so don't forget to do those wraps around the boots, on the wrists, and the bit around the chopper as well. By the time we get to those final highlights, we're using almost pure white. Sometimes it's just a little dot here or there, but it really just works well with the Iraqi sand to provide a very nice looking effect on the shield. I'm using both the same colours to highlight the teeth and the nails as well. So the Iraqi sand first to make sure that these teeth continue to look yellowish in their tone, and then finishing off with the off-white as little dots really here and there just to make it pop even more. To highlight the wooden handle to the chopper, I'm using model colour beige brown. And here I'm just focusing very much on the raised areas. The detail's really strong on this part of the miniature, so it's very easy just to follow along the heightened areas, and the dark remains in the recesses. Then in order to add a little bit more definition, I'm just using a little bit of that tan earth just to add a little bit of an extra layer to make it pop in certain areas where the light would catch. Now we're finally on to highlighting that skin and making it stand out a bit more. And we've got German camo bright green and Millstone from Model Colour. If you look in the top right of the screen, you'll see there are 3 green tones on my wet palette, or just about see them, they're slightly out of focus. But the middle one is a 50-50 mix of the other 2, and that is what I'm starting with. And it seems to be a really nice first layer highlight over that gilly green from Army Paint to Speed Paint. So I'm taking my time here, doing very small brush strokes, working on those heightened areas and really just making it pop a little bit more. All I'm doing here mostly is just accentuating the green highlighted areas that are already there, and that's one of the great benefits of working with a glaze style speed paint contrast style over an underpainted miniature, because it's already got that shadow and that highlight there for you. So you're basically colouring in between the lines, or top of the line, so it would be. So just adding those colours in, moving up to that top highlight, the middle stone on its own, and just really making it pop by adding a few little dots here and there. And there's obviously quite a lot of green on this miniature, so it's worth taking your time and making sure you don't mess it up, so to speak. So this is the area that will draw the eye most. That's why I worked on the face first. I'm just working on the flatter areas at the top, using that 50-50 mix first, and then when we get to the very top highlight areas, just a very small line here or there of pure middle stone. Definitely want to focus on things like knuckles and kneecaps, things like that for your pure top highlight, and maybe a little bit on the chin. All in all, you just work your own round. If you take your time, doing a little bit at a time until you're happy with it, and try to stop as soon as you feel you are, rather than push it too far. So now we're reaching for Contrast Blood Angels Red, and when I painted the teeth earlier, I dotted in the eyes with white, and all I'm doing here is covering the white with red. I thinned it very slightly just to make it flow and just give you that little bit of a natural lighter area showing in the centre, and that's enough for the orc's eyes. I mentioned earlier in the video the deep purple that I use for my skin recipes quite a lot. I'm using this here very similar to I do with my Caucasian ones. Rather than returning to the murder scene from Army Painter, this is a little bit more subtle. I just wanted to add a little bit more warmth back into the face, around the lips, and I decided to use this instead. And I've just added a little bit of water and glazing it on very thin. And much like you've seen me do on hands on Caucasian skin, I'm doing the same with the orc here, applying it over the knuckles and a little bit around the wrist area, and it just really subtly filters and adds a little bit more warmth and a bit of tone, which you can lose a little bit once you've done all your highlighting if it looks a little bit washed out. So I'm just adding that back a little bit. I didn't want to use the murder scene because it's quite a strong pigmented paint, so this is a little bit thinner, and it works in combination really well with what I've done beforehand. It's getting quite close to the end now. We're using some Game Air Silver to add those final highlights to the metallics on the orc. So be careful here not to go too bright with the metallics, because like I mentioned earlier on, this is a dull and not very looked after weapon, but it's also been clipped against lots of armour and bashed a lot as well. So I'm working on the edges. I'm using the edge of my brush where I can along the sharper edges of the chopper, and then I paint down in the direction of the chopping itself so that you can see where the blade are being worn. For the helmet, I'm focusing first on the little rivet, and then I just work from the top down about 2/3. I don't want to go all the way down. I'm licking my brush there really badly without washing it off first, but I'm just blending it out to make sure that you don't have any definitive lines, and you get this nice little effect where it looks like the light shining just on the top. Of course, you've got all that armour on the front of the orc as well, so I'm just again focusing on the bits that the light would hit most. So with all the silver paint drying, I've returned to the front of the shield. I decided to build it without any of the embossed emblems that come with the kit on there, so I thought it might be fun to freehand something on there as well. And I'm not going to take this as part of the tutorial, so I'll speed it up and you can see the finished results, because again, that's probably something for another day, but I had a little bit of fun doing it anyway. Now the silver's dry, we can go back to the metallics, and this is ready mixed oil wash grease from Soilworks, which is also made by Scale Colour. Now I'm just dabbing it on here really, and it's a way of making the blade look a little bit more worn and battered. So when this dries, it will dry almost like there's ingrained dirt, but it also add a little bit of shadow as well. So you can use it slightly as a glaze, covering some of the transition lines between the different paints, but also as an effect as well. And I just love using oil paints. I carried it over onto the helmet, blending between the different colours, so we still got some of that decayed metal showing through, some of the black metal, and of course some of the Game Air silver. And just by using this around the sort of stud or rivet at the front and blending up over those three colours, again it does a job of a bit of a glaze. And I'm just working around all the little rivets and the little marks on the shield as well. I've not varnished this model. This oil paint isn't too aggressive, and if you only use smaller paints on it, you have no problems at all. And it's just so much more controllable and easier to clean up and manipulate than something like a Nuln Oil would be, or an Agrex Earthshade, which would stain the shield and hard to remove if you get it in the wrong places. So we'll grab some Artist White Spirit, and this is the joy of oils, is to just use it a little bit here with a clean brush or cleanish old brush with the white spirit on, and you can remove any of the oils that you don't want on there. If they've pulled a bit too much or it looks a bit too heavy, you can take it off. And I only let this dry for about 20 minutes in between doing this. Oils take a very long time to fully set, and when you're painting over something fairly shiny like a metallic paint that's quite robust, you've got quite a bit of working time on it. And now into the final stretch and the finishing stages. I'm brushing on some dry pigment here. It goes right into the texture on the base. So I blow off the excess. You don't need to seal it. You can do, but it will change the way it looks. But if you blow off the excess, you won't have any issues with it at all. I also like to use some mud effects. This is from the Deer Armour FX range from Vallejo, and this is thick mud, European mud. Now the thick mud isn't the same as their base textures, their earth textures. This is more of an effect that you can dab on afterwards. If you tried to cover a whole base with it, it would do it, but it wouldn't work quite the same way as the base textures, which are very much like a Stirland mud from Games Workshop. This is slightly different, but this is a brilliant effect. I can pop it all over the base. I can put it on the boots, and you saw me add it to the bottom of the shield, and just really blends the orc into his environment. It's super easy to do. There's no skill here at all, but it looks fantastic. Add in some tufts and finish off with a black rim, as I always do. And something I couldn't resist, which was of course some blood effects, which I love to do with fantasy miniatures. It's really good to put a little bit on the shield. If you daub it on first and then wet your brush and just spread it out a little bit so it doesn't look too much like you just slopped red paint on there. It looks far more realistic that way if you use a bit of water to thin it out. And it just looks like he's been in a shield wall and bashed someone with it, and he's left some of them on his shield. The same thing goes really for blood on a blade. Less is more, so I'm adding it into the recesses a little bit there, but I'm thinning it out with some water and making it look like it's kind of been there. It's done some damage, but it's not thick and dripping to the point that it's too comical. And there we have it, one finished Orc Boy for Warhammer the Old World, taking you through the different stages. So the really basic tabletop stage, which still looks pretty fantastic over an underpainted miniature if you use speed paints and contrast paints and express colour, that kind of thing. But it also shows that you can build up layer by layer and do some normal highlighting and things as well, and take it as far as you wish. Well, I hope you found that useful or interesting one way or another, and listening to me rabbiting on all the way through. I really enjoy doing these painting tutorials, and even if you don't take anything away from it other than listen to me rabbit on, that's cool. If you take away tips or some recipes here or there, that's really cool as well. I just love doing them. They're really good fun. I have no plans for doing a full Orc and Goblin army at this stage. I'm always likely to change my mind, but I've got no plans for doing a full army when they launch, but I will be doing more painting tutorials. I'll definitely look to pick up the new special characters when they come out and doing painting tutorials on those. And so far I've done a Night Goblin and this chap here, so I will definitely have to do some more. I'd love to do a Black Orc and maybe do a standard regular Goblin as well, or maybe something fun like a Bull Rider. So there will be more painting tutorials for Orcs and Goblins and for all other factions for that matter, and I haven't covered them all yet, and I do intend to. I need to find the right miniatures to paint. Sean was very kind to send me an orc because I didn't have one for the tutorial. I was super kind for him, and thank you very much, Sean, for doing that, and hopefully the tutorial has lived up to what you wanted, and you've found it useful yourself. So let me all know in the comments what you think. What are you working on yourself? What armies are you currently collecting and painting at the moment? Maybe you're waiting for Orcs and Goblins and you're excited about the release. Have you heard any rumours? Any idea when they will be out? I have absolutely no idea, but usually when they release pictures and things, they tend to be sort of 3 months after that maximum. So hopefully we will see it at some point this spring, if not very late spring, early summer at the latest. Who knows, but we will see, no doubt. If you have enjoyed the video, please do give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. It really helps the video be seen by other people. The channel has a really friendly Discord, and there's a link in the video description if you fancy joining it. We also run something called a monthly hobby pledge. It's only just started. The idea is you set your own goals at the beginning of the month for the hobby you're going to complete, and then at the end of the month you've posted whether you completed it or not. I'm really struggling with mine this month, which isn't good for the first month we're doing it and for the host of the channel, but again, I'm only competing against myself. So take a look at that now. If you are a patron, you get a little added bonus for the monthly hobby pledge, and if you complete your pledges each month you can accrue dice, and then at the end of the year when I send out patron dice you get some extra dice in a special colour for the monthly hobby pledge. So take a look at that as well, and take a look at my Patreon if that interests you. Thank you to all my existing patrons for your continued support. I really genuinely appreciate it, and thank you for everyone who's watched the video. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.